Eugenio run out on me, and Harold was running out on me. I want to give you a slightly different view. I've called my comments this morning green growth and travelism, and I'll explain to you what I mean by that. My remarks are around a book that a number of us have contributed to. There are in fact 3 of the authors who have contributed to this book in this room at the moment. One is Harold himself. One is Janine Perez, my good friend Janine Perez, who is known to many of you in this room as heading up Embratur for many years. And the other is Ignace Schott, who is the director of Belgium's National Park. In fact, there are 46 people from all around the world who contributed to this book, which is going to be released in Rio in 2 days' time. And the book takes a slightly different tack. I think what you've heard this morning already is about a pathway. We are on a pathway to sustainable development. And we've been on that pathway for 20 to 30 years. And you heard that this morning from before the Rio Earth Summit. And there are many, many component parts of that pathway. Some of them have been organized by the UNWTO. Some of them have been organized by UNEP. Some of them have been organized in the framework of responsible tourism. But in fact, in my view, these are very, very, very small pieces of the transformation that we are really talking about when we talk about sustainable development, as it was at the time of the Rio Earth Summit. And Eugenio, there was a side event at the Rio Earth Summit. I actually had a side event at the Rio Earth Summit. Nobody came. It was a press conference and there were 2 media present. I actually did it with Jonathan Forrest, who was one of the WWF people at the time. But I'm looking at this evolution, and I'm going to suggest to you this morning that the evolution is much bigger in scope. Here I agree with Harold. Tourism has very much to play its part in this overall development, rather than to worry about the development of tourism. And increasingly, responsible tourism, sustainable tourism, pro-for tourism, all of these pieces are going to contribute to it. The bottom line is, and again I agree with both of the previous speakers, we are shifting to the place where the responsibility is at the destination level. As soon as you talk about impacts, the impacts are on the destination. The tour companies go, the airlines go somewhere else, the hotels go somewhere else. The travelers go somewhere else. The destination is left. And I can tell you, and this isn't in my remarks, but I just want to give you an example. Last year with some colleagues, we did a 6-month analysis of Bali in Indonesia. And we did it from the bottom up. We got a large number of local people. We showed them how tourism was likely to develop in Bali. We did really good long-term projections. We showed them they were going to get a huge number of Chinese tourists, that the Australian tourists that they were going to get was going to increase, that domestic tourism was going to be a much bigger portion. And the bottom line was, at the end of it, they said, hey, we don't want this. We don't want it. Because we showed them the trends and where they were going. And they said, we'd like some Chinese tourists, but not enough so that it changes our culture. And we've already had enough Australian tourists, we've got problems with them. And by the way, they said, the biggest problem is not the tourists themselves, it's the consequence of them being here, the traffic jam. the change to our island. And I think that's the essence of much of this discussion around sustainable tourism or responsible tourism. I have learnt over the years to put a much bigger emphasis on the destination and helping the destination understand the pluses and the minuses of more tourism, and then deciding on what terms it wants to have those tourist visits. I've called the presentation a Johnny Appleseed video. Now most of you will have no idea what that means, so I'm going to take a second to tell you. Johnny Appleseed was a character in American folklore, and he was kind of a guy with not a lot of money but with a good attitude to life, and he had a bag of apple seeds, and he wandered around America dropping these apple seeds. And when people asked him, why are you doing it, he said, because apples are good. And then he died, and that was the end of the story. But I, at this stage of my life, after 3 careers in a sense, as a serial bureaucrat, one in the International Air Transport Association for a long time. That's why I ask questions about airlines. I think airlines are actually doing good things, and we should be looking at them dispassionately and objectively and not emotionally based on contrails in the air and studies which are not always balanced. And then I had a second career. For 10 years I was the president of the World Travel and Tourism Council, and I was in Rio. I became a friend of Maurice Strong, the father of sustainable development. It's a friendship which has lasted to this day, and this book is actually has a preface by Maurice Strong. Maurice was the Secretary General of the Rio Summit and the organizer of the Stockholm Conference that Eugenia spoke about this morning. And I learned from Maurice how broad and how complex this issue of sustainable development is. And now, my last years, as long as I can stay on this planet, I'm getting involved in education and academia and learning, because I'm absolutely convinced, as I'll try to show you, that the future is not with us. The future is with the kids and the kids' kids and the kids' kids' kids. And we didn't learn anything about, we didn't learn about tourism in school. We didn't, nor did the political decision makers, who everybody says they don't understand us. Well, of course they don't understand us, because they didn't learn about it any more than we did. And we didn't learn about sustainable development, but my kids learned about Earth Day, and they have a better knowledge than I have, and many of you here have. And your kids and their kids will know much more. It's why I think it's a journey. It's very multi-dimensional, it's incredibly complex, and to look at little bits of it and make judgments is probably an error. So, I'm going to show you another slide. This well, this is a slide that you can just look at and sort of, you don't have to worry about it. Green growth, I'm going to try to tell you what is green growth and what is travelism. Green growth is not about the environment. Green growth is about a very complicated world having thousands of meetings all over the place about huge subjects like the economy, climate, poverty, the fact that we've got 7 billion people today and we're going to have 9 billion people in 2050, and they're all going to be consuming more and more of our resources. So green growth is just a way people have come up with to, it's all in that little cloud on the left there. It's all there. These are the big issues that people are dealing with. And they started dealing with it way down here, but we're kind of here now. And we have to get these problems, we won't fix them, but we have to get them mostly fixed by 2050. And the only reason why 2050 is a finite date, and Harold mentioned this, because the climate issue is a global issue, and we've kind of set a date on which we should stabilize the Earth's temperature at more or less 2 to 3 degrees more. Otherwise, people will start frying or freezing. Anything else that we do on these issues, there's going to be deaths, there's going to be terrible things happening, but they're not going to be Armageddon. This could be Armageddon if we don't get it right. And this pathway, we don't have to do it exactly right. That's why I asked the question about carbon and offsetting. Maybe offsetting is right, maybe it isn't right. It's just a piece. We just have to stay within these guidelines, the whole of society. And down here, you can't really read that very well, but basically that says what we're supposed to do. I stole this from Tom Friedman, and I've tried to paraphrase a whole book in this thing here. We have to use what he calls more energy from heaven. That's solar, it's wind, it's thermal, it's renewable energy. And he said we have to use less energy from hell, which is the black stuff, oil and coal. And we have to do it because there are millions of transactions involving these, zillions, every single day. We're going to have a massive coalescence between information technology and energy technology, smart grids, smart cars, smart houses. This is tourism, this is the world that's got to change. And we've got to do it inclusionary, because if we don't, people will revolt and kill people. And we've got to do it on the basis of biodiversity conservation, because we can do all the other things right, and if we screw up the balance of the planet, then the planet can do things in a big way that none of the, getting a hotel to throw towels in the bathroom or not doesn't make any difference. This is what we have to do. I mean, it's monumental. We have to transform all production, all consumption, and all investment by 2050. It's actually that. So put your tourism exercise into that framework and say, okay, how do we stay on this journey? And responsible tourism is one way, one of the pieces that will help us do it. And the last two things on this slide, there's going to be trillions of dollars at stake, hundreds of trillions. Transfer money, adaptation money, development money, capacity building money, infrastructure building money. The clever people who understand this will get more of it than the dumb ones who don't get it. And this is, you might say, why have you done this silly slide like this and made it unclear? Apart from the fact that it's not focused, by the way, it's a mosaic. Everybody starts from a different position. Every country, every community, every individual is at a different place. What we have to do is broadly end up here at the same time. I think we've got 40 years to fix this problem. That's not to say we shouldn't be working on it hard now, but it is to say, don't get dramatic about it. Deal with it in a thoughtful way.